And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
Today's guest is Ann Hall. Ann had a near-death experience where she encountered Jesus, and now we're going to learn about it. Ann, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much, and I'm glad to be here to share my story.
Well, thank you. Well, if you don't mind, can we start on the day your NDE happened and start from there?
Definitely. So my NDE experience occurred 30 years ago, actually, and that was in the month of October in 1991. I was 15 years old, and I want to give a little bit of a little information about what my life was like at that time before this incident happened. So at 15 years old, I had a lot of angst. I was very angry with the world, with God. And I had a lot of childhood trauma that was causing me a lot of depression. Basically, I was very miserable in my life. I was not a happy camper. And because of some of this trauma, these issues I was having, I actually basically turned against God and my religious upbringing. I was raised in a Catholic family, and I started rebelling against the church, rebelling against God. Ultimately, I was claiming atheism because I reasoned that, if there was really a God, he wouldn't allow these bad things to happen to me. And because he's not protecting me, I reasoned that everything I've been taught my whole life must not be true. There must really not be a God. It must be just a bunch of phooey. And I just had the attitude, well, I'm not buying it anymore. And I just basically blocked God out of my life. And so that's kind of how my mindset was at that time. What led to me dying was that I decided to trip on LSD. With my boyfriend at the time. And I had never done it before. I took 2 hits of purple haze. And I don't think that should have killed me, but it did. Ultimately, it did. My boyfriend was fine. He also took that amount. But for some reason, my body just didn't process it like normal people, and it ended up having a fatal kind of effect on me. So what was happening before I died, my boyfriend and I, we were in my parents' home in the living room. We were starting to hallucinate. We turned on the TV, watching some of these old time cartoons, Felix the Cat. So you've got these silly kind of, characters, cartoon characters in this cartoon, and they were kind of marching around in a circle. Maybe they were dancing or something. And then I saw these characters come out of the TV screen, and they started doing the circle in front of me in my living room. And at that time, it was just very amusing. It was still all fun and games. I was like, oh, ha. I was very aware. I was hallucinating, and that what I was seeing was part of that hallucination. And I thought, okay. And then all of a sudden, those characters, they turned to monsters. And at first, those monsters were still just very friendly looking. Like I would liken it to Sesame Street. Like they're not scary, right? But then they got scarier. And then it was like something you might see on a horror movie, kind of scary. And then at that point, I was like, it's like, this isn't very nice. This is not what I want to experience. Why are they getting all scary on me? That's kind of what I was thinking. And then those monsters got scarier still. Then they turned to demons. And then they weren't just going in a circle or in front of me in the living room. Those demons were circling around me, like physically around my body. And finally, it got to the point where it spooked me. I was scared. I closed my eyes really tight, and so I wouldn't see them. But it didn't really make a difference. I saw them all the same, just as if I had my eyes open. and they were closing in on me. Like they wanted to get me basically. And I didn't understand why. I just understood that that's what they were trying to do. And in this moment of just being really panicked, I actually fell back in the chair I was sitting in my living room. And at that point, that's when my boyfriend said, okay, we need to get out of here. Let's go outside. Let's get some fresh air. And I thought, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. And that'll do the trick. And that'll kind of get rid of these scary demons. But as soon as we went outside and I'm standing in the driveway, I started to kind of have this jitter, if you will, just kind of shaking or trembling. And my boyfriend told me to stop it. He said, stop shaking like that. You're scaring me. And I wasn't aware of it at first. And I said, no, I'm not shaking, And then finally I caught myself twitching and I couldn't control it. And once I became aware of it, I was like, wow. And then it wasn't but just seconds before I started, I fell on the ground and I started having a full-on convulsion. And my boyfriend then, he still didn't get it, that it was really happening. He thought I was faking. He thought I was just being silly. And he finally said, okay, stop it. This isn't funny, But then he said he saw me foaming at the mouth. And when he saw that, he knew it was real. And I was not faking it. I was really having a seizure. So also what happened at that time, I fell down and was seizing. I had two next door neighbors. They happened to be sitting outside on their front step. Then it was my neighbor's daughter who was older than me then. She was in college and her college age boyfriend. They saw what was happening and they ran over. And at that point in time, I guess I had just stopped seizing. I remember laying on my back. I remember my boyfriend was hunched over me on the right side. My neighbor, the girlfriend, was on my left side, and behind her was her boyfriend. And so I had stopped seizing, and then I remember the conversation. So the neighbor's boyfriend was shouting at my boyfriend, like across my body. And he's like, well, what's happened to her? What caused this to happen? And he told her, well, we're tripping on LSD. And with that, he became livid, the other boyfriend, and was yelling at my boyfriend. How could you let her do this? You don't let your friends do drugs. That's not what you do with someone you care about. And then all of a sudden, he just caught himself and realized, okay, this is not the time for that. This is not the time. And then they were looking at me. Their attention went towards me. My boyfriend was saying, I'm kind of getting worried. Look at her lips are blue and her nails are turning blue. And really you can't make this up. It was just like a really dramatic scene, basically. And so all three of them were just commenting back and forth. They were all very panicked. Now, my boyfriend has learned how to do CPR because his parents were in the health profession. I know he knew how to do that. And so he attempted to feel my pulse. He couldn't feel it on my neck. He attempted to feel it on my wrist. He said he couldn't feel it on my wrist. And at that time, while he's trying to get my pulse, the other boyfriend, the neighbor's boyfriend on the left of me, he has my hand. He's holding my hand. He's saying, okay, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. I could hear him and I could see him perfectly. I tried to squeeze his hand and I couldn't. And so he's like, oh gosh, if you can see me, squeeze my hand. I tried to, again, I couldn't. So then he finally thought of, okay, if you can hear me and if you can see me, blink your eyes. And it seems like I just managed to muster up the strength to blink my eyes. And that gave them some relief. They're like, okay, good. She's with us. And then, I'm sorry, I guess I flip-flopped. At first, he asked me those questions if I could see and hear him. And then I blinked my eyes. And then after that, that's when my boyfriend was trying to feel my pulse. Okay. And then he started panicking because he couldn't catch my pulse on my neck or on my wrist. And then he went and tried my ankle. and he couldn't get it. And he was just commenting that my lips and my nails were turning blue. I have no pulse. I'm not breathing. And they're just like, oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? Just, back and forth. And the neighbor's boyfriend said to my boyfriend, well, do you know how to do CPR? And he says, yeah, I've been trained. I've never done it. He's like, well, you're going to have to do it now. And so I know he was just scared out of his mind, but he's like, okay, I can do this. And I recall him coming down on me, giving me the first breath and the first pump to my chest. And it's like right after then, the next thing I remember, I was out of my body and I was looking down, and I was looking down on the ground, and I saw my body lying there, and I saw the three of them huddled around me. And, the funny thing is I was just really kind of intrigued with that whole scene there. I didn't actually understand at first that was me lying there, my body, and that I was out of my body. I guess I was like, if you're watching a movie or something on TV, you're just kind of passively watching and you wait for the scene to change, and you just kind of follow the scene, you follow the story. And that's kind of how I felt like I was just watching, and I was just waiting for something to change or something. And well, the next thing I knew, someone had lifted me up and was carrying me straight up. And it was at an incredible speed. It was really fast. And it was so fast and startling. I shouted out, hey, because like I was intent on watching that scene, whatever that was. And I was focused on it. And I was trying to figure it out. And then all of a sudden I'm just snatched away. I'm like, wait a minute. And, but the feeling of how I felt being lifted up, it was so fast. So it makes me think of when you're at Six Flags on some kind of ride where they shoot you up really fast, and that feeling where you feel it in the pit of your gut. And it felt like that at first. And then it increased in speed, and it was so fast. Words can't describe. And the next thing I know, I was somewhere else, and they just dropped me off in this place, and it was complete blackness. Complete blackness. I've never known darkness so dark. And I liken it to like when I was a little kid, and you just close your eyes real tight while you're in your bedroom in the dark. And like, that's probably as close I can get to how dark it was. And then I was just there in the darkness and the silence. And I'm like, okay, like, trying to figure this out, like, okay, where am I now and what's happening and why am I here? Like, I'm alive, like I have a life. And, then I really started thinking about it. I started putting two and two together, and it was not at all obvious, not at all. And I was like, okay, but I just saw myself lying there on the ground, and they were all around me, like I was passed out or something. So, but if my body's lying down and they're all around me, then how can I be here? And at the same time, I'm like, and where is here anyway? I started figuring out, okay, it makes sense I'm out of my body, but this doesn't make sense to me because again, being raised in a Catholic family, I had always heard stories my whole life growing up about others having near-death experiences, but they always talked about going to the light or seeing some kind of light or angels or something like that. And none of that was happening. So I'm like, this is weird. And I was like wondering if I'm dead. And then the first thing I did is I actually called on God, and I said, God, I need you to answer me now. Am I dead? And then, but suddenly it was like this voice came from somewhere, and I don't know whose voice, and I don't know from where it came, but it was just basically, it was this question asking me, what is my belief? Do I I'm just jumped ahead again. At first, this voice came about, what do you believe? And it was clear to me, like, what it was implying, like, do I believe in God or don't I? And all of a sudden I just pondered it for a second. I'm like, no, in that moment, it all became clear to me. What was true, what was not true, what was real, what was not real. And I had discerned in that instant that the reason why I was claiming atheism was because I was confused, and that I had created this story as to why God didn't exist and why everything was happening in my life as an absence of God being there. And I realized that was just the story that I was telling myself. That wasn't really true. And as soon as I acknowledged that, yes, God really is there, God really exists, and I was just confused. I was like, no, I don't believe any of that. I don't believe any of that. Like, don't hold my word on that. And all of a sudden, then I was still just left with this silence and in this darkness. And I'm like, okay. But it got me thinking. Back to, again, as a kid growing up, being forced to go to church every Sunday. There is just the saying I recall hearing time and time again. And this is probably not the exact quote, but this is how I recall it. The priest was saying, so whenever you should find yourself in darkness, Jesus says, call on me and I will be there. I will rescue you. And I don't know why, but that just stuck in my mind, I guess, because I heard it so many times. And so that just came into my memory again about calling on God or Jesus. To me, I'll just clarify, I use the word Jesus and God interchangeably. I know a lot of people make a distinction between them being two different beings. And I know that in the Catholic upbringing too, they're two different beings, but I always use them interchangeably. So I thought, okay, well, darn it, here I am. I'm in darkness and I'm lost. I don't know where I am, but I know this isn't it. I know that I don't belong here because I don't see any light and I don't see any angels and I don't see Jesus, and no one's coming to me telling me what to do or showing me where to go, like in all those other stories I've heard about. And I just had this interesting feeling, or knowing, if it were, that I could move. Like I wasn't stuck to just staying still where I was. And I moved over a little bit to my left. And it was so fast how quickly I moved. And it spooked me because it's not like what it's like in the body. And I had a feeling immediately that if I continue to move, that I could go somewhere else and I would end up in just a different realm, if you will, than where I was there at that present moment. And that scared me because I had this feeling or a knowing that if I moved and I went somewhere else, that I could be stuck in a really scary place and I could be more lost than what I already felt like I was. And so I just kind of got angry in a way. I was like, no, I do not accept this. I am not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. And I started calling on God. And I said, okay, God, Jesus, you said to call on you if I find myself in darkness. So I'm doing it. I'm calling on you. So I demand that you answer me. Tell me if I'm dead. Tell me if I'm dead. And it was like I was panicking and I was crying. But of course, I didn't have the physical body. I didn't have tears, but it was like I was like crying with spirit tears, if you will. And so like a mantra over and over and over, what felt like equivalent to maybe 15 minutes on earth, I just said over and over, God, are you there? Answer me. Am I dead? Am I dead? Answer me. Am I dead? You have to answer me because I'm calling you. Answer me. And I was just over and over saying that for seemed like a little while. And then out of the blue, then I see this really bright white light. And it was Jesus who appeared to me. I recognized him right away. even though I have to say he did look a little bit different than a lot of the images that I grew up seeing of him and what we're told he looks like. But it was enough to definitely recognize him. And the first thought I thought was, you look a little different in person than, what your pictures depict, but I still know it's you. And in that moment, there was just like this comprehension. I want to say he spoke to me, but it wasn't like speaking with words where his mouth was moving. It was just, telepathic. It was sheer just comprehension. And it was just an exchange of love. I could feel this immense love and compassion. And then I reciprocated and I expressed, again, without words, just on the soul level, that my love for him. And in that moment, it was just so tranquil. And I was completely calmed. I felt peace. Is just beyond words. And so after basically, he said, I love you. And I said, I love you back. And he says, well, I'm a little, disappointed to kind of see you here at this point in time. This is not what we had planned on. And to answer your question, let's just say you're not in your body now, but you're not exactly dead yet either. Your body's, still hanging on. And, you still have the option to return to your body and continue to live your life. Or you can not, you can remain here in spirit. And it was like, I pondered that for a second. I thought, well, now that you mention it, I don't really fancy going back there. I think I'll just stay here. And he says, well, before you make that decision, I want to show you something. And I said, okay, I'll, listen to what you want to tell me or see what you want to show me. And it was like he took my hand and he just like looked up in this direction. And it's like we went somewhere together. I don't know where we went, but all of a sudden it was like this big screen was in front of me. And this screen was where I was going to be viewing my life review. And so he explained to me he wanted to review my life with me. And it was like I saw it in two panels. So the first panel, it was like I saw everything in my life from the moment I was conceived until I left my body. And everything that he showed me in the first panel was everything that was negative or painful. That was really not nice. And I wasn't allowed to remember a lot of the details of what I saw, but I remember very vividly my feeling and my reaction to what I saw then. And so the feeling that I had after watching all that was just, I was like horrified. No way. I was begging, please don't make me go back there. No. I want nothing to do with that. No way do I want to go back there. But then he was like, okay, but I'm not done yet. Let me show you the other side. So then again, I saw my whole life from when I was conceived in that life up until that point in time. And this time I saw everything that I perceived as being good or positive or beautiful in the world. And again, I don't remember exactly the details of what I saw, but the feeling I had was just overwhelmed at how beautiful it was. And then there's another saying that I recall from growing up in the church about how good always triumphs over evil. The good always wins, and something to that. And so what I saw is that I saw that was true. I saw it. and I'm like, wow, blown away. And then he showed me something else. And he says, okay, if you choose to return to your body, this is what the rest of your lifetime is going to look like. And again, I don't recall the specifics of what he showed me. I recall the feelings, and I do recall certain images. So he showed me just certain people that I would meet. He explained to me that I had soul contracts with certain people, and basically these people were waiting for me. They were waiting to meet me. They were waiting to have this experience with me. And he showed me the ripple effect of that, because he showed me, so like what happens is when you do one act of kindness for someone else, and how you lift that person up, and then how in turn they're filled with this beautiful love energy, and then they go out and they do something in a loving kind of spirit, and they do something positive into the world, and they affect somebody else, and on and on and on and on. And I got to see, like I was above the earth looking down on the earth, and I got to see that ripple effect of transformation happen. And it was like the whole earth was just lit up with these lights everywhere, like and like a grid. But that was the ripple effect in motion that I was seeing. It touched the whole earth basically. And of course I was just in awe, like, wow. And, and then finally I saw this point, where he said, at this point in time, things are going to kind of get a little bit more smoothed out, if you will. Things are going to not be as like traumatic or tumultuous and stuff, because my life has been very tumultuous at that point in time. And so, and I saw that at that distant point in the future that I was to be living a rather peaceful life and very simple life. And I thought, okay, well, good. I'm eventually going to overcome all these challenges and obstacles. But then I thought, is it really worth it though? Because I saw that I didn't have some, I don't know, really amazing credentials, like college degree, or I didn't, I wasn't like someone who was wildly successful in one aspect or another of my life. I didn't have anything like that going. And it just seemed to me, but why would I go back and experience all this hard stuff? Just so for what? But the reward is just to live a pretty mediocre life. To me, it didn't seem it was worth it. And I just said, but it doesn't seem like it's really worth it to me. Like, what do you think? And he says, well, here's the thing, so again, he showed me the ripple effect. He showed me the beauty that was there. He showed me, he showed me that there was going to be this point in time. I feel like this is what we're all living right now in these COVID times, how we're all on lockdown. We're like sealed away in our homes, in our little rooms. And I saw myself like that, it was like I was in jail, but it was a comfortable jail because I wasn't really in a jail. Like, I was just in my room, and the image that I saw was I was like looking on this little screen that I was holding in my hand, and I was connected with all the world, and all those lights that I saw light up, and the ripple effect. And I was shown that I was going to be living this kind of life, and it was just really confusing to me. But he reminded me that this is the reason why initially I had chosen to incarnate to this lifetime at this precise moment and time-space realities, because of what was happening on the planet at this point in time, is that there's this big awakening happening, and this is just the beginning of it. And then he told me how up until this point in time, I'm going to be living my life in darkness. And I actually saw a visual, and it was like of my body, but I was just a shadow. Like I was just all black, like a black body moving around, like not able to see, not understanding anything, in a state of confusion. And I was actually horrified. I said, what? Why would I want to go back and live like that? You know? And he says, well, you will live like that for quite some time, but eventually you're going to figure it out. And because of the people you have a soul contract with that are going to help you along your path, are going to help you along the way, they're going to wake you up to what is true and what is real. And ultimately, you're going to do the same for others. And it was with that, I was just in awe again, because I was seeing all the beauty that he had pointed out to me. And I saw all these positive chain of events that were to happen. And that if I didn't go back, if I chose to not go back, I would be basically missing out on all that beauty and all that goodness and all that love. And I wouldn't be able to be an integral part of that transformation and what was to come. So I went from begging, please don't make me go back. Please don't make me go back to that horrible place, to the other end. I was then begging to be allowed to go back. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to go back. I have to go back. I have to do this. And honestly, that's the next thing I remember of being there, out of body. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in the hospital, and I had all these tubes in me, you know, IVs and everything. I woke up in my body and was aware I had all these tubes. I was in the hospital, and I understood waking up that way that I was in the hospital. I've had other traumatic incidences where I was in the ER and all that. So to me, it was like, okay, this is a familiar scenario. But when I woke up, I just had this feeling like, I don't need all these tubes in me. And I just started taking them out until the nurses saw and rushed over and tubed me back and all that. So that was basically it. That was my experience. And it wasn't really until probably like later on, I want to say that day or the next day, you know, that I was really processing everything that just happened. And it took me a while to put two and two together to acknowledge, hey, I just had like a near-death experience. Like I really left my body and I just met Jesus, and he just gave me the choice to return, and I just chose to come back. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, well, alrighty then. And so that was it.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
So where are you now as far as your religion goes?
I do not claim to be religious. So since that moment, basically, I then accepted Jesus back into my heart and back into my life. But I don't adhere to a lot of the teachings in the Catholic Church specifically. And then I started doing a little bit more digging around and looking into other religions. And I found that I really didn't feel comfortable. It didn't resonate with me to follow any one religion. But I just, ever since that moment on, I guess I define myself more as being a spiritual person, not religious. But I mean, I still have Jesus in my life, and believe in angels, and I've, seen angels, and I've had other kinds of supernatural experiences in my life. So I know all of that's true and all that's real. And so that's how I feel about all of that still today.
Okay. How have you changed as a person due to that experience?
I was always very intuitive before that experience happened. But afterwards, I really feel like that was a heightened sense in me. So basically, I came back and all of a sudden I felt like I had just clarity on a number of different things that I really shouldn't have clarity on given the years and my experience in this life. But I just knew things that I otherwise didn't know before or shouldn't have known. And that stayed with me still to this day.
Does that experience stay with you still to this day as well? It hasn't faded like a memory?
No. No, it hasn't. And well, the interesting thing on that is that, so I was 15, like I said, when this happened. It was the very next year I was in a really bad auto accident. And it was another 10 years after that, I had a second auto accident. And basically I had incurred a brain injury. And so with those accidents, I had a lot of memory loss, and it took me a long time to recover that. And I just say that because I do know the difference between what it's like to just black out, of your memories and not be able to retain those memories. And then what it feels like to just have a very strong, vivid memory still of that experience. Like that was one thing that never faded through the years, through, the brain injury and the memory loss and that kind of thing.
Did you feel like it was more real over there than it is here?
I do feel like it was more real. See, the thing is, in this earth life, we always feel like this is the real life. We're living real life right now. And when we die, basically we're going to be unconscious. We'll be in a dream state then. But that was really the inverse of how what my experience taught me. In contrast, being out of the body made me feel like this earth life is just a dream. This is the dream state. That over there was more real.
It sounded like in your experience that you could almost just think where you wanted to be and you would go there.
Yeah, I believe that's how it kind of works. And I think that's, in the beginning, what scared me, because I didn't want to go somewhere that was going to be, I couldn't have gotten darker than it was, but I didn't want to go somewhere like dark in the sense of being evil, being bad, being scary. Right. And I only wanted to go where there was light. And so that's why I was just being really stubborn and really adamant, like, nope, I demand that you answer me, and I demand just show me where to go from here. Tell me what to do, because I know this is not it. This is not it.
A lot of times people, when they get back, they're like sad or disappointed because it was so amazing over there. But I think you were more happy to be back because you wanted to, you had stuff that you wanted to do. Is that correct?
Yes. And although I have to say I kind of had mixed feelings about that, because I saw this beauty and all this love on the other side, and I was so inspired when I was there seeing it. Like, I didn't come back with the memories of all those details. So I came back just remembering that I chose to come back, but I couldn't remember exactly why. And when I came back to my life, again, everything was still the way it was before I left my body, which was basically to say that it was in a state that was not harmonious. I was not a happy camper. And so, I didn't magically start being this incredibly happy person. The depression I was experiencing before then didn't magically just disappear. But I would say I definitely felt more confident in just being in my own two shoes, and felt more assured that I definitely have a role here to play, and I definitely have some work to do here.
Did anybody say at the time, wow, and you're different now since this experience, like you're a different person, or you act different, or anything like that?
I want to say mostly no, because I don't think I had anyone in my life who would have really said anything like that. I mean, I really just kind of kept it to myself. I didn't open up about it, except for to that boyfriend that I had that experience with, and probably to my parents. But that's it. I also was a very shy person. I've always been really shy since I was little. So again, having that experience wasn't something that I felt like, oh, I got to tell everybody about this. No, I felt like this is a really weird experience. And if people already judge me and think I'm a weirdo, though they're really going to think I'm a weirdo now. So that was something that I didn't feel comfortable sharing with too many people. And ultimately, I told some people through the years that I felt like I could trust, and and who I felt would be receptive and maybe wanted to hear my message. I did open up to them, and they really appreciated hearing it. But this is the first time in 30 years that I've ever come out and shared my story in a public way. So,
how did your parents and your boyfriend receive that when you told them? Did they believe you, or just kind of, blow it off?
They believed me. Yeah, they definitely believed me. They really didn't have too much to say about it other, than just nodding their head and just like, wow. And, that kind of thing. But I mean, yeah, they're all believers in God and Jesus. And so everything that I was telling them to them in their mind wasn't a big stretch of the imagination, if you will. So
do you fear death anymore?
No, to be honest, I've never feared death, never. And I especially don't fear death after that experience. No.
What do you think inspires you about your experience?
Wow. What inspires me the most is just to keep on living, to keep on searching, to keep on doing good, to keep on trying to improve my life and working on expansion. Because this is something I'll have to admit. I was depressed at the time that I had my NDE. And like I said, it didn't magically change for me afterwards. And I've had a lot of bumps in the road, a lot of tough experiences. And as a result, I basically stayed in a state of being suicidal. I've lived most of my life with suicidal ideation. And even though I had that experience, even though I saw this beauty, all this good, and I was inspired to come back, I later regretted that decision. I thought I made the worst decision. I doubted my judgment over there, thinking that, it would all be worth it. And I really didn't kind of change my tune on that until maybe in the last 5 years now. I turned a corner. Yeah.
What changed in you that made you change?
Gosh, it wasn't like one particular thing that happened and it just flipped the script for me. I think it's been just a lifetime of just working on loving myself, a lifetime of working on healing a lot of the trauma wounds that prevented me from liking myself or loving myself. And this old conditioning, this old story that I was telling myself of that I'm not worthwhile, I'm not lovable, and all these negative things. And I finally started realizing that those were lies. And I started realizing that it was old conditioning. And I started learning the truth again, and that, I am a child of God, and that I am beautiful, and that I am special, and that I am worthwhile. So it's been a long, gradual process. And so I just think that over time, eventually, just things kind of started clicking for me. Just things just started moving in the right direction, and now I'm really, ever since, I don't know, I say about 5 years ago, there's no set timing when it happened, but it's about that time I started, I don't know, just flipping the script for myself, writing the new story, so.
Yeah, I think that's great. What kind of advice would you give to people who are suffering from depression?
That's a tough one, because I know there are different reasons why people will fall into a deep depression. I would say just do not give up. Just keep holding on. Do not give up. Because there is so much beauty and there is so much love in the world. In fact, there is so much more beauty, so much more love than there is bad, than there is negativity, than there is pain and suffering. I mean, so much more, not even a little bit, and it's hard even right now as I sit here to even wrap my head around that. And I wouldn't be able to believe it if I hadn't seen it myself. And so I actually don't even expect that someone else sitting here listening to me right now, who's in the depths of despair, to even believe me. I don't expect you to believe me, but it's just, I think each person for their own, they have to make that own discovery for themselves. And it's just a matter of choosing it, of making the decision to go inward and choose to find that, setting the intention to find that. And if you need to reach out to God or to Jesus or to any spirit guides to help you, then do it, because I know they're all standing around just waiting to be called on, waiting for you to ask for their help. Just like what happened to me. It's like they were waiting for me to ask for that help. And I do know that if I had not called on Jesus while I was in that darkness, he would not have appeared just then as he did. But I had to call on him.
I really like how you said that there's so much more love out there than there is negative. And do you think that there is so much more love out there than people can even realize or comprehend?
Definitely. I think there are some very, let's just say there's some people living here on this earth who I perceive as just being very positive people who've never known depression like I have. They've always been supported. They've always felt loved. They've always felt good about themselves. So they've always lived a life that was joy-filled and that was positive and upbeat. And I want to say, like, those people even who are kind of at the top of the top, they can't even fathom how much beauty and how much goodness there is, because that's how much there is. It's insurmountable, and it can't put into words.
When you were over there, did you experience that amount of love from Jesus?
Yes. Undeniably. It was just, I mean, there's nothing else like it that I've ever experienced, even on, I want to say, my happiest moment on life and on earth. My happiest moment can't even come close, doesn't even scratch the surface of the beauty and the light and the joy and the love that I felt in an instant of just being there on the other side with Jesus. Yeah.
Do you have anything that you want to promote? Do you have a website or a class or a book or anything?
There's a lot of ideas I have about writing this story and publishing it. And I've had other encounters and other really amazing experiences with spirit and angels and other brushes with death. Not that I actually did die other times, but came very close. And so I thought about writing these stories out, but no, I haven't written them yet. I don't have any kind of website. But I'm open to dialogue, and I'm open to speaking with anyone who just wants to talk and who just wants to share, or someone who just wants to ask me questions directly. So you can find me on Facebook. I'm newly on Instagram, and also I have an email address. So it's ANNE.NDE @Yahoo.
Oh, that's cool. That's a cool email address.
Well, I had a feeling that you might ask me for a website or something like that, in which, since I don't have that, I decided to create this email specifically so I can connect with anyone who might want to connect with me.
That's great. Now, you said that you've connected with angels before. Can you tell us how to connect with angels if we want to? Is that possible?
I want to say yes and no. I mean, I don't have like a how-to manual, this is how you do it kind of thing. But I can tell you how I've done it. So I mean, it's just as simple as calling on them. It's just like if saying a prayer or in meditation, it's just setting that intention of calling on them and then answering. But if there's time, I can share with you a story where I had an angel encounter where I believe it was an angel that saved my life. And this was in a car accident that I had. I don't know if we have time to go into this now or not.
I have about 5 minutes.
Okay, so in a nutshell, this is what happened. So I was driving. I was 16. I had only had my license for a couple months, very inexperienced driver, very low confidence. And I was driving on this country road, and it was all windy and hilly. I was very upset emotionally, and I had gotten a fight with a boyfriend then that I was dating, and I was crying. So I was not driving as carefully as I should have. And then I came around this 90-degree turn on this, windy road. I should have slowed the car down probably to 20 miles an hour. But again, I didn't. I was going the speed limit. I was going around 30, 35. And so when I came upon that turn, and because I was going too fast for the turn, and just, my emotional, mental state and everything, I lost control of the car. It flipped, it rolled many times. My left arm got tossed out the window. The window was rolled down. It was summertime. And then the car ended up landing on top of my left arm. And I was still in the car. So that's at that point in time, that's when I saw what I now later came to understand as the angel encounter, but she looked just like a regular person. And it was a woman who came up to me. I saw her out of my peripheral vision. She walked up the road towards my car. She called me by my name. She says, "Anne, give me your right hand." And I gave it to her. She squeezed my right hand, and she told me, "You're going to be okay. I'm going to go call for help, and I'll be right back." And she made me really calm in her presence. And I said, okay, that sounds good. Okay. I mean, I was in shock and I didn't know any difference. So as soon as she let go of my right hand and I saw her turn around to start walking away, to go get help, I started panicking, and I actually started shouting at her and cursing her for leaving me, like, "Don't leave me." And then I blacked out. But the next thing I knew, I was out of my car. I was sitting several, I don't know, like maybe a yard or so away from my car. The car was still on its side. But this lady, she had me, she was sitting, crisscross in the middle of the street, and I was sitting in her lap. And basically she was like, coddling me, and she was stroking my hair and soothing me. And also now, because it was summertime, I had a beach towel that was in the back seat of my car. She had that towel, and it was wrapped around my left arm, the one that had gotten pinned underneath the car to stop it from bleeding. And in that moment, when I opened my eyes and I realized she was holding me, she was soothing me, I didn't feel any pain, and I was calm. I felt peace. I felt so much peace and calm. So she explained to me that she had called for help, and help is on its way. And then the next thing I knew, I saw a helicopter come, and this was the rescue helicopter that was coming for me. And I saw the EMT, they came out, and I saw the gurney, they came out to load me up on the gurney. And as they were lifting me, placing me on the gurney, that woman, she lifted me up to help them put me on the gurney. And anyway, then the next thing I knew, I must have blacked out again. The next thing I knew after that, I woke up in the helicopter ride, and I didn't recall having been in the accident. And the EMT explained to me, you've been in a really bad accident, and we're air transporting you now to the hospital, and your left arm is severely injured. And I didn't believe it. I said, that's not true. And she says, well, if you don't believe me, then go ahead and look at your arm and you'll see, you know, the damage that was done. And I know I was resting with my right hand was over my left hand, I think just instinctively, you know, covering the wound kind of thing. So I lifted up my right hand, and when I looked at it, it was just red, dripping with blood, like some kind of horror movie, you know. And I went into shock and I started screaming. And I know they came at me with the oxygen and put me out. So the next thing I remember after that is waking up in the hospital, and one of the investigators there on the case, he came back, and I guess this was like the next day or maybe a few days later. I'm not really sure on the time. I just know that at that point, they told me I had already had multiple operations on my arm because they saved my arm. They thought they may have had to amputate it, but they ultimately ended up saving it. And so anyway, but he wanted to ask me about who called for help, who rescued me, because that's something that they really couldn't figure out, like between the police department and everything like that. And so I told him, oh, well, that's easy. You know, this woman that I saw, you know, she went and she found me and she called for help. And then he says, looking at me like he's not really understanding or believing me, he says, yeah. Are you sure there wasn't somebody else, like somebody you know that might have called for you or something like that? And I'm like confused too, because I'm not understanding why he won't just accept my answer. Like, no. I'm like, no, I just told you, like, it was this woman. So anyway, he just said, okay, thank you. You know, I'll come back and talk to you in another few days. So I overheard him talking to someone else in my room, saying that, yeah, she must be really out of it still because of the morphine. She just, you know, she's not really making sense. Anyway, so so he came back a few days later to question me because, yeah, they just assumed that I was making up some story because I was on morphine and, you know, all that, and didn't remember. So he came back a few days later to ask me the same question again. What happened? Do I know who called for help? And I told him, yes. It's the same thing I told you before, though, about that woman. And I had remembered her vividly in detail and everything about her. So, and he said, well, look, you know, we went and we even spoke to the team members that were there in the rescue helicopter. And we told them what you said, that lady was there, you know, helping you onto the gurney and everything. And they told us that there was no woman there. They found me, according to them, they found me laying in the street, on the side of the street and out of the car. And this is the puzzling thing, is that nobody knows who got me out of the car, because given the fact that the car was flipped over on its side and my arm was pinned underneath the car, I mean, it would have taken a tow truck or like a fire truck, something like that, to lift the car off of me. And then they were explaining it would have had to have been lifted off with such precision and such care so as not to basically rip my arm off. And how is it that I got out of my car? Because they told me the fire department, the police department, and whoever else, they were not notified. They had no clue. So it's a mystery. Nobody knows how I got out of the car. Only I know that woman, and she said she was going to get me help. She said she was going to get me out, and she was there, coddling me, had the towel wrapped around my arm so I didn't bleed out and everything. But, the EMT, they said they didn't see her. And so, so to me, in my mind, and also in that of my family, when they heard that story, they all believe it was an angel, that it could have been no one else.
Maybe it was your guardian angel.
Exactly. I think so.
All right. And before we finish up here, do you have one last positive message that you can share with everyone? That's
a good question. I would say I think the main message to my experience is probably going to be addressed to those who are maybe questioning their faith or wavering their faith, and those who flat out don't even have any. Because at the time that I had my NDE and I met Jesus, I was claiming to be atheist. I was completely denying him. And to me, my experience was a testimony of what is true and what is real. So hopefully I can impart that with other people who, again, might be, I think it's a common theme for a lot of people. I've heard it time and time again, where they suddenly decide that they don't believe in God. They don't believe in a higher power because no loving God would allow all these horrible, bad things to happen to them. And I think that my story is a testimony that, yes, indeed, there is a loving God. And even though bad things can still happen.
Why do you think bad things still happen?
I call them bad things here while I'm in the human form because I perceive them as bad. But even though I do that, I have later learned a lot of these like bad experiences were actually blessings in disguise, because through these hard experiences, have come valuable lessons that our soul cannot learn otherwise. I see that now. It's taken me all this time and so many years to really see it this way, as a blessing and not a punishment. But I wouldn't be the person I am today had I not experienced all the hardships that I have.
All right, Anne. Well, I've run out of time, but thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. I really appreciate you, and I wish you the best.
Thank you so much, and thank you for listening.
You have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.